Want to wait and do minutes later? I'm looking for my agenda. Good afternoon. Calling our facilities meeting for April 14th to order. Jenny, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Adi,
Yes.
Mrs. Bodie,
Here.
Mrs. Casper,
Here.
Mrs. Schaefer,
Here.
Mrs. O'Connor,
Here.
Mr. Miller, Mr. Passarge,
Here.
Mr. Hatfield, Mrs. Fuller,
Here.
and myself.
We're all here. Thank you. We will hold on approving our minutes until a little bit later in our meeting. Mr. Miller?
Thank you, Mrs. O'Connor. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Passarge as we dive right into our facilities meeting. There's your lead in.
What's that?
That's your lead in.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, so to start off, I'm just going to go through a quick recap, and if there's any questions or thoughts from our last meeting that you want. Really, the various options, we broke it back down into basically three core options. Option one. Where we are right now. Within those two iterations of option one, we have really doing nothing but keeping our same grade level configuration and renovating everything we have. And option
Chris, I think I'm not sure how you intended to do it, but perhaps we could discuss those options as we go
Sure.
and just see if there are questions
Yep,
or if there's
perfect,
things we like or
perfect.
we don't like about those options.
I have a question.
Put your mic a little bit.
This is a different language.
This is what?
It's a different language.
Different language.
It's symbols and I don't know. Yeah.
Yes, I see.
It's a different language.
Mine too.
What?
I have enough trouble with English.
How
Yes. this is
about
a-
this from last
because-
time?
Maybe Chinese.
So what is your point? Is you'd like to talk it through to make sure you understand the language? Well, that is a different language.
I mean, it's literally.
It is a different language.
It's literally a different language. It's not that I don't understand it. Literally. Okay. All right, then. I will try to follow with. We could share. See?
Different languages, yeah.
See that? I still have the old
I
one, so
still
no,
have
that's fine.
For last meetings. So that,
Yours like that
that
too?
looks like. it
I
could
still
be-
have,
yeah,
yes.
This could be.
Different language?
That is strange.
Right, it's just a page with,
I didn't even notice that. It's right from the PDF.
Isaac, what is yours?
it's really not me. After the day I've had, I feel like it is me. Here, he gave me another one.
All right.
Did I take yours though, Mr. Passarge?
We
Okay.
can share.
If you need to
We
see
have
those.
another one.
I have those
Okay.
originals.
We'll just share. It'll be fine.
Do we have the paper here? So.
I have another set.
Sorry. Now Isaac, on the other hand, does speak other languages, but the rest of us. we may not
Well,
so
let's give
much
Isaac
speak.
my copy then.
Okay. Do you want to share with mine? So it is a different language also in terms of just what we're talking about. So perhaps we can walk through each option and just have an open discussion about what do we like about these options? What do we think works and perhaps concerns we might have with them.
That'd be helpful.
All right.
That'd be great.
Okay.
So again, we're calling option one sort of the status quo, where option 1A is basically keeping our current grade configuration and doing all renovations on every building at some point. Option 1A or 1B rather is same type of work, but we're going to take our 4 worst buildings, which would be the 2 Hopewells, Creekside, and West Freshman, and replacing those buildings with new buildings. So, and every other building would get some kind of renovation to it. So option 1, it's really sort of our status quo, same grade configuration, same buildings, same locations. So that would be your option 1 sort of flavor.
And it would not be participating with the state either. We would be going it alone and paying 100% of the cost.
Right.
Okay.
And the big differences between the two, Chris?
The big difference between the two are 1A is really doing a renovation on every single building, keeping every building we have currently. And 1B is replacing 4 buildings. So we replace Creekside, West Freshman, and both Hopewell buildings with new buildings.
And that keeps our grade configuration where we are now.
Correct. It keeps us K2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9 buildings standalone and 10 through 12.
Okay.
Under option 1, do you have a preference of one plan over the other?
Not really, to be honest. 1B, at least you would get 4 new buildings out of it if I had to. Those are our worst buildings. As they stand right now, they could be not our worst buildings in a few days, depending on what we find. We have 2 buildings right now that we have some sewer lines are going to need to replace, aren't even on the list here. Adina and Liberty Junior probably have over $100,000 worth of work that we have to do this summer to replace sewer lines.
Priority levels have been adjusted since the very first packet that you gave us. Is there a reason why?
On the grade configuration piece, just through various discussions throughout the committee and looking at different things from different perspectives. We went through and sort of took our notes and listened back to the meeting and looked at adjusting those.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
And we added safety as one.
Yeah, we did have safety, but just based on the various discussions too, and because this was the initial look from a while back, we added safety. We'd had other discussions about things. So we updated that based on those discussions.
And I just want to say before we start, I'm not wedded to just ending up with 3. I think it's fine to end up with more than that if we need to. But certainly narrowing down is appropriate. And also, I believe that it's important that one of these options in our community discussions come forward, because I think people will be asking us, if we don't put one forward, why are you not even considering maintaining our current configuration? And there's not even that opportunity for discussion. So I think we should include something out of this pack.
Yeah, I've had discussions too with the team, and we were talking about whatever option 1 is sort of like your base. And that wouldn't even be one of the other 3 options. That would be just, here's our baseline, whether it's renovating everything or building 4 new ones. That's sort of our baseline. And then you look at the other options compared to that one.
Okay.
And like we said last time, all the options are relatively in a similar range as far as costs. So costs really shouldn't be a huge driver as far as the differentiating between the various options. So that's sort of a nice thing to look at where the cost is similar.
So what do we like about this? What do we like about this option?
Well,
Find something. Come on.
Okay. Okay, go ahead, Darby.
which one are we on? The current
1,
option?
yeah.
1A and B.
Well, I like that the teacher collaboration and the targeted resources are leveled higher than either of the other 2 options. If you're looking at numbers. And full equity, which isn't really a concern. Yeah.
It's good for Darby.
Come back to me.
Julie, how about you?
I mean, I think it's important to include an option that shows our current configuration, so people have an option to weigh in. So to me, that's the biggest benefit of this, is to let people see the differences. So originally I was leaning to 1B because of the 2 number 1s. I like 1B better. But I don't know if it's almost better to, since it is just our baseline, this is what it is, these are our current buildings, this is not making any changes, for people to see that that cost, even of just renovating current buildings and building no new buildings, is similar, is helpful for people to see, because if they haven't gone through this detail work, they won't know that. So even though I also have a preference to 1B, I think almost including 1A as our baseline and then building from there and the other options would be my thought, but I'm flexible on that, certainly.
I do agree that we need to give them the baseline of what we currently have so that they compare it to the other options.
It sounds like a benchmark.
Yeah, I don't really have a preference if it's A or B, because quite honestly, this is not my favorite option, but I realize that that's just my opinion.
You could tell that.
Just my opinion. I do think that it's important when if we go with one of these options for the community, that we make sure that we present that option one is fully us funding, and excuse me, the unknown portion of that's the dollars right now. But some of these are older buildings, like you said already. Now we know we have $100,000 that we didn't see in this at Adena and Liberty Junior for, was it sewer, Chris?
Sewer lines.
So that's a basic comparison. I do agree that we need to show where we are now versus what's out there, especially people that are not fully engaged in our schools and maybe not even know what our current configuration is.
That's a good point.
I also like 1A because we're not tearing down any buildings. And I think, however, I feel like it might be needed, but again, besides West, how old are these buildings in general? And really, do we need to tear these newer buildings down is my question. But then when you look at the dollars, and there's really not much difference than one of the ones that I prefer because of certain reasons. And then again, like we discussed last time, it's still putting a Band-Aid on a situation where down the road, we might have to tear it down anyway. So that is a benefit because I'm not sure how much has been invested in some of these buildings in the past.
Okay, in my case, I'm not a fan of either 1A or B. 1A, first of all, what I like with it is the cost is a little bit lower than the others. And besides, people don't like change. So when you are bringing something that is unknown, people react to it, even if it is a good thing. So I believe that probably it might be the most favorite because people already know where the schools are, knows everything about the buildings and everywhere. So if you're going to bring a change, you're going to have some resistance. That's just what my thought. That's it.
So you would go with 1A?
Yes. Okay. But it's not my favorite though.
We've heard that a couple of times. I think Isaac hit on something that's important to remember. These are neighborhood schools. That's been our model. And there is a lot of identity. And we saw that when we had our union school and had to take that down. There's a lot of identification with families who've had the kids go through. They like the neighborhood school model. They like that their kids, they play together. They come home from school together. They like that piece to it. And I do think that there's some, I won't say emotion, but there's some consideration that needs to be given to that neighborhood school model. So I would go with 1A as well as our baseline. It's a good job, guys. One down.
1 down, 10 to go.
Do you want to do anything else with option A, Chris?
I have nothing further to add. And
Just a reminder too, I think Mr. Hatfield was one last time we met who had the comparison sheet also about what the sort of replacement costs of things would be based on the benchmark that you all just identified. So I think it's helpful when we talk about operational costs down the road.
I will say, as I look at all of these, just as a general note, I was disappointed to not have some lower cost options, that they're so close together in cost. And I feel like I'm being funneled toward a cost that I find prohibitive in many ways, although I understand we have a way to address that, but that is a concern to me.
I think that might be correct me if I'm wrong, but that might be just a materials, the skyrocketing. I mean,
Well, I think there are good reasons.
Yeah.
But it's hard to swallow.
Yeah.
too. All
Just,
right, would you like to go on to 2?
yeah, just to finish this up though, when we look at the total renovations of buildings and doing that kind of work, it's more costly to try to do that, to keep that up and running and school running. When you're talking about replacing major HVAC systems, electrical systems, that's a lot of time and effort, and probably why you see a lot of the costs that are similar, because it takes a lot more time to do that type of work and do it correctly, right? Jim?
And think about having a new car. I mean, think about buying a used one. My sister just bought a used truck and it's already breaking down and she's having to spend more money fixing it. Whereas a new car, you have a warranty, you have, backup if certain things do happen to fall apart, but you technically don't have to worry about that because it's brand new and your expenses over time will.
Right, and if you look to just a real world experience that we have like at Creekside, all the unit vents that are at Creekside that for our HVAC system, they don't make parts for those anymore to fix and do it. So you got to replace whole unit vent systems, which are 11,000 a room. Well, we're looking at an option where you do a split unit where you do a unit that can do 2 rooms, but then you got to look at your power requirement for that too, and make sure you have the proper power. So you may have a fix on the HVAC side, but then you're gonna run into a power issue later. So, as you go
Domino
through and
effect.
renovate stuff, you may have a fix for one area, but have to look at something that's unintended on the other area. So that's where it becomes costly at times. And
Yeah.
I
That's what we're
understand that. I
experiencing
just
now.
don't have to like it.
I don't think any of us like it, but that's sort of our reality right now with that. So, all right, we'll move on to option 2. Great. So, again, all the options in 2 focus on a different grade level configuration than where we are currently. So option 2 looks at the grade level configuration of a pre-K standalone building, K3 buildings, 4-6 buildings, a 7-8 buildings, and a 9-12 buildings. Again, from this perspective, it does create one less transition for students compared to our current configuration. It basically eliminates that standalone 9th grade transition because you were combined. So within option 2, you sort of have 3, you do have 3 core things. Option A is really you sort of modernize and replace some buildings, get rid of some of your older buildings, and you convert the East Freshman to a 3rd high school facility that you would share between East and West to help accommodate with the growth for 9th grade. So from a logistics standpoint, you would convert these freshmen into a 3rd building, and you shuttle kids back and forth throughout the day for different academic reasons. So that's A. B,
Excuse me, Chris, is that the one where it's the whatever,
Flex building.
the flex building that we've named 5 things?
Don't let him name it.
right.
I know, so I'm
Right.
trying not to say the name, but that's the one where it would be specialized. It might have Spark, it might have cyber, it might have incubator. That's that one.
Correct. Correct.
Thank you.
So with A, yes, so that's there's two variations of that. So within 2, you can do either a conversion of the East Freshman building, or you can actually build a new building. So those are the options within the 2. So B is the same thing again, but a new, instead of converting East Freshman, you build a new 3rd high school support building, I would call it. And the current East Freshman would convert to a 7-8 building. So sort of a similar type of thing where you shuttle kids back and forth, but instead of using existing East Freshman building, we build a new one. And C is really, there's no 3rd high school option for a shared building. You just add on to existing high schools to create that 9th grade into the main campus. So A and B are shared building between the high schools and how you do it. And C is just adding on to your current high schools, get the 9th grade into the main campus. So that's the highlights for option 2.
So board,
So A is just help me understand. A is building 2 new 7-8 buildings. And B is using East Freshman as a 7-8 building and building 1 new 7-8 building.
Correct.
Actually, East would be the flex building.
In 1A or
In
2A.
Not in B.
Right.
In B, there is no.
In 2A, East would become that flex building.
There's no flex in B or C.
So I guess for me, I'd ask Mr. Miller his opinion, because I think this whole, again, whatever the third building would be called, this Lakota land, I'm struggling to envision how kids would have time to be shuttled back and forth. And if they would lose too much academic time, well, like, because they'd have to skip a class period in order to have time for that shuttle, because they can't make it in 5 minutes from West Main campus to current East Freshman. So how much academic time are they going to lose in that shuttle? And it seems to me we could do additions or however we do it at the high school. So if we want that specialized piece, we could do it within those buildings, and then only half the kids, should they choose to shuttle over, are being shuttled instead of all of our students. So for me right now, I'm struggling with the logistics a little bit of a third building versus making it, I perceive it to be more efficient to just have those type of opportunities within our main buildings, but convinced me I'm wrong, or tell me why that's not correct.
I don't think you're wrong at all. I think it's just which way do we want to go collectively as a board and administration on that. It's loosely based on the model up at Dublin, where they have the Emerald campus and they do run shuttles between, they have actually 3 high schools that funnel into 1. But there would need to be flex time in the scheduling if we did decide to go that way, because of just the very case you brought up. I think the positive, and I can go either way, quite honestly. I think the positive of having that is you have 1 strong cyber program, 1 strong Spark program, things like that, versus having 2 separate. But there's a benefit to 2 separate as well. I mean, the benefit is they wouldn't have to be leaving. The other thing is it could be more opportunities for kids, because some kids might not feel comfortable going to a centralized place too. So it's not really, I wouldn't even say one is even better than the other. It's just, what do we think is going to be the best option for us? We would have to add on or make sure that we have the adequate space for both of the high schools instead of having Lakota Central, so to speak. But that's okay.
So, I'm sorry, Julie, can you finish? So if we did away with a quote third campus for those kinds of things, and the cost savings for 2 teachers, whatever, in order to sustain those programs in those schools, we would then have to add on to East and West, which isn't on the plan.
And there might be some staffing adds too because of that. Maybe not. It just depends on the number of kids that are involved.
Right.
So again, it's not one is vastly better than the other. It's just how do we want to look at it for our kids?
I think that's kind of what 2C is right now, right?
It is.
Yeah.
Is adding on to.
And again, I'm not saying that we couldn't transport them from one campus to the other high school campus.
you got time
if you want to
involved.
just have one program.
Right. It would be
Then it's
looking at
just
things differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, again, whether kids are willing to cross the line from east to west
Right.
versus a neutral site. And how we build that in with time
Sure.
even for that.
We are Lakota.
Yeah. That's what's
It's
gonna be
still
my answer, too.
transporting them, right? Just from,
Well, half of
To
them
me-
potentially.
But that 2A, 2B, or 2C doesn't make much difference to me. The cost is not also too far from each other, so it doesn't matter to me whichever 2A, 2B, or 2C.
So Isaac, you're neutral at this point.
I'm neutral.
Okay.
I think Julie brought up some good points on 2B. And I think I would probably lean, but then I also like that third additional building, because eventually even down the road now we'll be able to have the ability to expand into 3 high schools if that's needed, potentially. So that's kind of a little as forward thinking. But again, if we do not want to do that third building, I like doing the additions to the high schools as well. Initially I said option 2B because I'm not really a fan of the additions. But I do think Julie has a point, figuring out the logistics of traveling transporting our students to the different buildings. So that is definitely something to think about.
I think I would prefer A or B. I like the third building option. That's just me. I think it gives us an opportunity to do more of the we, be more inclusive as a district than, like Julie said, people not wanting to cross the line to go, these students not wanting to go to West for cyber and vice versa. I like the idea of the flexible building, but that's just me.
How difficult, because I feel like I remember when we talked about those additions to the high schools, that it was going to be pretty tight and we were going to have to get really creative on how to get those additions done to our existing high schools. Am I remembering correctly?
That is absolutely correct.
Okay.
That was,
I was just going to say that you just do need to be aware with 2C, trying to get those high schools up to 2,700, almost 2,800 students with additions is going to be difficult. With parking, with amenities, just the way they're set up, it would be difficult to get those on there.
that was going to be my question. How are we adding on? Are we going up, out?
So for me, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, it would be out. But there again, kind of the problem with the buildings is you can add more students in classroom wings, but it's the supports, you know, the cafeterias and the support areas that are already landlocked within the building get very difficult to enlarge to accommodate that number of students. So there are some challenges with increasing the numbers that we would have to increase those buildings to make that work. So,
But it could be done.
but it could be done. Absolutely.
So for me, I can't look at 2 without looking at it in conjunction with 3, and again, giving the broader choices. So I will say I'm already biased to 3C is what I kind of like there. And that to me speaks to the neighborhood schools. It gives us the most efficiency of our buildings and being able to decommission some buildings. So I think we have some long-term efficiencies that go with 3C. But since that plan only has 2 high schools, I kind of like as a counterpoint to that, then bringing forward 2B, which has the 3 high schools, just so you're looking at both options within your plan. So to me, it's kind of, I have to look at it together versus in isolation of 2 versus 3.
I just want to just clarify. I know that we all know this. I just want to clarify if anyone's watching or listening for the first time that we're not talking about a brand new third standalone high school that's on par with East and West. It's more of a connector between those
specialty
two.
campus.
Yeah, specialty campus
Shared.
for our high schools, shared campus. So
Yes,
I
sorry.
know that no, just for everybody that I know we all know that and realize like we've been talking about it. But if someone just tunes in right now, they might think we're, getting ready for a third standalone. That wasn't to you. It was just the discussion in general.
I heard somewhere that the rumor is that we're building just one big high school for the entire school district. So that's just a
I
rumor.
hear lots of rumors
Just a
like
rumor.
that.
Graduation
It'll be
takes
great
7
in
hours.
football.
Yeah.
If we just have one team, our band will be
Right.
phenomenal, but it'll have 600 kids. It'll be
Right.
fantastic.
Well, to that point, Julie, I don't want to move on before we're ready, but
I'd
isn't,
still like to speak too. So
I'm just saying, when you compare, isn't 3A, Chris, isn't that a standalone? It's not building it, it's just converting East freshmen. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, go ahead, Linda, sorry.
it's okay. I lean toward at least presenting to our community. And again, I'm still maybe focusing out here instead of narrowing down to where my final choice is. But what I believe is important for our community to see, and I lean toward, I definitely want to include 2C. I want to see the additions versus a new building. I think that the community would like to see that as well. And maybe part of the conversation is about that. It will be more difficult, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't consider doing it. I am hearing from all of us, so I think this is, unless I'm misunderstanding, we'd all like to see 9-12 brought back together again. Is anybody in
That would be my
disagreement with that?
preference.
Julie, you're not there yet?
Right.
Okay. So it sounds like we're leaning in that direction, but we're not all convinced. And so I really like the thought of our freshmen being back in the building, and I think there's a lot of benefit to that. I also listened to Mr. Miller and Mr. Passarge, and I keep 2A in there out of the whole flex building thought and the thought that there's some other optional things we could do with that. And I would really like to see what our community thinks about that versus the additions. So I would keep 2A and I would take out 2B. I can eliminate that comfortably.
I think it's important to give the community both options of two, one with the new building and one with addition. So I
So
would
could we
agree
do
with that.
2A and 2C?
Yeah.
Could everybody live with that? Isaac, can you live with that?
Well,
You just gotta remember with 2A, you still have to do an addition on the East freshman.
Right.
Right.
and mine is in a different language.
You're translating.
Because
pretty
Darby and
well
I
there,
don't read
Darby.
whatever language that is.
This is 2A. And 2A is still, reusing the, okay, all right.
Yeah.
I was wondering what would happen because I do think that Easton or the high schools definitely need something, either an expansion, an extra building, but personally, I mean, I think building the two new high schools is something that will help with the future of our students and the expansion. And we can make room for just being at Butler Tech this Friday. Was that Friday?
Wednesday.
Sorry. I went to the wrong doctor's appointment this morning, actually. Too. But on Wednesday, I think until Butler Tech can kind of get that cap, the legislation fixed with the cap, there are a lot of students that are being turned away from Butler Tech that are still interested in those tech programs that we can potentially provide. And so I think either building a new high school that has room for that, or that third building would help accommodate
Career tech.
and being able to provide those resources for our students who would like to go to a technical.
So are you all right with eliminating B, going 2A and 2C?
Yes, so I do like, 2A and 2B.
C.
Oh, C.
C, 2A and 2C. One has us building a new building and one has us just
Okay.
renovating.
additions. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay,
I mean, that's where we all said it.
all right, we've eliminated another one.
So we're going with 2A and 2C.
Everybody ready to move on to 3?
2A and 2C, is that correct? Yes.
2A and C.
All right, so moving on to the option 3. Again, all 3 of these options are designed around the grade configuration of pre-K standalone building,
Mhm.
K-5, 6-8 middle schools, and 9-12 high schools. So option A really is looking at additions to accommodate for K-5 buildings. 3 6-8 schools, and using that third or using East Freshman as the high school shared facility. And again, all high schools would also get additions with that one as well to accommodate.
Okay, I think maybe I'm biased because this is the one I'm very, very comfortable with. B, I mean 3 particularly. Because if you look at the grade configuration, academic achievement has the highest score there, 3. Number of transitions, 3. Neighborhood identity, which is very, very important. The kids, congregating, knowing themselves close to their age, it has a high rate there. Number of buildings, 3. Operational cost, very important. And I can see you've added safety, which was one of my concerns, and it gives you 3. And now I will settle for 3B. B is my favorite because if you also look at the numbers, it look more favorable than the other 2 in 3. So that's why I'm settling for 3B.
So
if I look at 3C over B, then I'm decommissioning in both situations 10 buildings, but in B, I'm bringing back 6, and in C, I'm only bringing back 3. So I think that allows more operational savings and efficiency. And again, that's where it's 2 high schools, but they're new high schools. So we would have the space to program and to fit what we wanted. So my inclination of the 3s is the C from an operational efficiency standpoint, and being able to configure everything to be able to support any programming that would need to be done and have fewer logistical issues in the current day of busing challenges, which I don't see going away anytime soon.
Correct. And the one thing that when I looked at them, between B and C particularly, are your K-5 buildings and the sizes and variations between your K-5 buildings, where some of them are quite large compared to the others. Whereas in 3C, they're all fairly close in size as far as student enrollment. So it sort of creates that balance as well.
I agree with everything. Excuse me. I agree with everything Julie just said. I mean, I just think logistically, it makes the most sense. I think it'll be the easiest to accomplish. And I do like the 2 new high schools, whereas the prior one only adds 1 new high school. So kind of like, who gets the new high school? Where versus the 2, I think, again, we can build it to accommodate what we need, and looking into the future, we can build it to fit the needs of our students.
So I'm hearing Julie C and RBC.
I like the grade configurations in this plan in 3. I think we've heard a lot about the middle school concept in the middle, how that affects kids. And I like this configuration better than any of the other grade configurations. I don't like A in that as well as I do B and C.
Can we rule out A? Although Isaac.
You didn't like A?
Isaac liked B.
Yeah, I
So we can take A out.
yeah,
I'm hearing for A.
yeah. I mean, I like B and C, and I see challenges on both B and C, so I don't have a.
I guess challenges and everything. Chris, do you have any recommendations in this sector?
Right. The only thing that, again, seeing it up to me was just trying to balance out the K-5 buildings as far as enrollment, because with B, you have some buildings that are 1,100, while others are at 600. So you're almost twice as big of a building for some of the K-5 buildings compared to C, where everybody's between 600-700. I think the biggest one was up to 1,000, which would be East Freshman. But some of that can be accomplished through redistricting and looking at how we set up those attendance zones. But just from my perspective, C had the most balance to keep those buildings roughly the same size.
And yeah, and that's important from the standpoint that we're growing more out here than in Westchester. And so if we can keep them balanced, we wouldn't be out of those buildings that soon, hopefully.
And even with B, you can still do some things differently to try to look at attendance zones to try to balance those things out a little bit better. So it definitely have to be some kind of
You're about to say the
zone.
R word again, aren't you?
Attendance zone adjustments to
Adjustment. I like it.
Better.
Mrs. Logan or Mr. Miller, do you have any feedback on any of the plans?
I think 3A, why would you want to continue with 23 schools if you're going to go through all of this? And of course, you know, when I look at efficiency, I just think 3A, I don't know why you would keep that one. And when I look at these, other than the grade configuration change for 3B, and I understand that piece, but for me, the one that sticks out that is the very, very different option than any of the others on the board is that 3C. I think you have to bring 3C forward for people to look at it because it is so unique compared to all the other. I'm
a fan of 3C as well. The question I was just talking to Jim about, kind of off to the side, was in 3B, and I just want to make sure that we're all, and I had to get clarification on it, but if you look at the 9th, 12th grades in 3B, that new 9-12 building, I was asking about clarification about if that's the, Lakota Central, that third building that is essentially added to it. But if you look at the one sheet where the total number of students is essentially the same size as the East and West. So that's a third.
Is that on 3B, is that new building the combined?
Yeah, the
Emerald
shared campus building.
Okay,
But the shared campus building would be a very large building that houses
Large
1,800 students. It wouldn't be set up the same as the current, you wouldn't have like the gymnasiums and all that other.
Right,
You'd have
it's
a typical
be a
school, but
specialty.
It would be a large building with a lot of classrooms.
That's just a big difference between B and C,
Right.
in my eyes.
It's not a traditional high school.
So are we in, unless there are other comments? I definitely lean more towards C at this point in time. I lean more toward less transitions. So I like the grade configuration. And I do appreciate the operational efficiencies and cost savings that we're looking at in C. Although I would like to see that quantified down to some type of a ballpark dollar amount. That would be helpful in decision making. But I also think there's some value in putting B forward as well. And certainly 3 people have said, or 2 people plus myself have said, they're interested in that one as well. So I would say we eliminate A and we include B and C as well.
I don't have a problem with that.
Is the board comfortable with that?
So eliminating A and going with B and C.
No. Does that work for everyone?
So, but that has us bringing 5 plans forward, which was, we said we were going to get it down to 3. And I think for people who haven't gone through the hours and hours of meetings that we've already gone through on these different configurations, it could become too complex with still having 5 to bring forward versus our target of 3.
Yeah, and my question was, when are we going to narrow it down next? Again,
Well, the next step will be to get some community engagement around the plans. Put some costing to these different layouts, if there are operational efficiencies or whatever, put some costing to it, and then we'll take it out on the road and have the community start to weigh in on what they think.
so do you think it would be better to have 3 or 5 options at this point?
I honestly think that our team is capable of presenting 5 options, so I think it's fine. If there's a majority of the board that has interest in more than one in each area, I think that's fine. I started this off by saying I'm not wedded to 3 options. I think we've come down from 9 or 11 or something like that, so.
Chris, how do you feel about presenting 5 options to the community?
Well, to me, option 1 is sort of a baseline. So I don't even really know, consider that option. That just tells us where we are right now, what it would be. So it's really
That's really 4
status
options.
quo and 4 options. That's how I look at
That's
it.
how I was looking at it. I was going to say the exact same thing. It's sort of the benchmark of what we have now. We still have to do things. It's still going to cost money, but it's either stay with that or do something different and new. So it feels like one
One
plus 4 right now,
baseline.
right?
Yeah.
I'm
Right.
just gonna say, I still think it's too many.
Yeah.
I can be the odd person out, but I think that's just a lot of options for our community to try to still look at.
Work out.
That's just me, but that's still a lot.
Is there,
Well, we could go back to the drawing board and start combining some of these options, but I think that's another different headache and sets us back too, so.
Do we want to recap really quick what I'll call the benchmark? I'm kind of putting it off to the side, but recap the 4 that are left to see what the
and
main
see if we can
differences
get
are.
down to 3?
Yeah, I would like to hear it again, even if we don't get down to 3, I'd just like to hear the 4 again, not to put you on the spot.
So we're going to stick with option 1A, sort of baseline, that everybody.
Right.
We're going to call that baseline. So then the next one we looked at was 2A
2C.
and 2C in the grouping for 2.
And then 3, B and 3 and C, right?
Yes,
2A and C and 3 B and C, correct?
yes.
So I want to go back and look to see what the differences are between the 2.
Maybe we should ask Betsy to weigh in as our communications person.
I was just talking through that, if we go with, to stick with the 4, maybe there's a way where we sort of keep the options broad and don't go in a whole lot of detail, but just get the initial feedback through like a thought exchange where people can go through, and if stuff will boil up, it's like 2A, people are like, no way, no way, no way, and it doesn't boil up like the other ones do. Maybe that's a natural elimination, an easy way to eliminate it from consideration if we get a lot of feedback through thought exchange. That could be one way to do it, but
I think thought exchange is terrific for our internal community. I don't think it reaches the external community. So I'm certainly happy to look at that as one piece of it, but I would still go out and have the community conversations prior to eliminating more.
I think it's a combination of both
Mhm.
because I think that you need to get in front of our community and gather that feedback through something like Thought Exchange, where we could recap what the community meeting was about in a video that people would watch before they go in and add their thoughts. and
So
stuff.
build the thought exchange off of a community engagement
Well,
in-person event.
Yeah, I mean, we would have the Thought Exchange ready to go so that at the end of whatever community engagement session we have, people can put their thoughts. What questions do you have? What concerns? What do you like? Right then and there. However, we would have a video ready to go that basically recaps what everyone is going to hear at that community session, so that if you weren't there, you can still hear that information. And if you want to go more in depth, then we would record it and we'll put it up on our YouTube page.
My only concern would be the community that is not plugged in to social media and that pay taxes.
Well, we would advertise this through ways other than social media. We would go through mailings, we would tap into people who we know in certain groups, that personal invitation.
I
that
think
sort of thing.
mailings would be great. Thank you.
If we look at 2A and 2C, if I'm looking at them side by side, I know that there are other differences in here. I mean, I don't want to sidetrack one building or another. But when I look at 2A and 2C, what I see is the main difference is that Lakota Central building versus not doing that. Is that
And the additions to the high school
right?
instead of,
It's part of that, right?
it's
So
two
that's
separate options.
that's sort of what I mean, there are other, I'm not going to say this right, but there are other little things in here to it. They're not little, don't get me wrong. But I think that's probably what all of you are thinking is either like that Lakota Central or you prefer not that. And that seems like that's the difference between these two,
And the additions,
right?
additions.
Right, you have to do one without the other.
Well, we have to add to there's additions on both of them, right? Because you're adding to the East Freshman to make it the optional shared campus.
I'm just pointing out the
Yeah.
differences in how I see A and C.
For me, the reason for keeping both those options is the high school differences.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say from an architectural standpoint is there again, I think that putting those huge additions on the high school may not be your best option in the long run. Now, certainly you can look at it, but I just think operationally and trying to get that many kids on those campuses is going to be a tough go. And I'm just not sure that the outcome would be the best use, but there again, certainly those can be looked at further, but just from an architectural standpoint, we'll throw that out.
And I agree with that. So I go to option 2A, however, that's the most expensive. And I know money isn't that big of an issue because it is
So close.
so close. But that is one that is something that does concern me, is that is the most expensive for 2A, but that also supports the option 3C, which is probably my favorite.
Which also, what isn't on there in these is the cost of which I know we talked about, the cost of the option. What we don't know is the savings
Still
On-
waiting on that information. Right.
on combining campus, like doing different grade configurations.
I think if you look at the projected,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
yeah, if you talk about the savings or the cost, if you look at the projected cost of each option, you will see that the numbers are there. I think that's where you see.
No, I'm talking about what happens operationally from going from
Oh.
23 buildings to,
Okay.
yeah, cost of running the buildings to whatever, 10, 11, I don't, whatever's on here, 17, I don't even know. Lost track.
Two A and 3B are essentially the same, but just a different grade configuration, correct?
Which is why we eliminated B.
2A and 3B.
2A and 3B are essentially the same option with the different grade configuration.
So
Is there a way to eliminate one of those? Does the board
That's
feel
what I'm-
like they
that's
can
what I'm saying.
eliminate one of
If you don't
those?
like the whatever grade configuration, you prefer one over the other. It's almost the same one, but just a different grade level.
Well, I think that I have heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I have heard that the five of us can all tend to lean towards the third grade configuration for
Because
ease of transition and
2A, basically, you're creating that third shared facility, and so is 3B. But just how the structure below your high school level is different
right,
is the only difference in those two,
your
really.
grade configuration has only 4 changes. I don't have a problem eliminating 2A.
With that too, right?
I mean, I don't.
And leave 3B, right?
2A and leaving B because it
Yeah.
still gives you that grade configuration
Yeah.
option.
Mhm.
And then 3B gives us 2A option, but with the grade configuration that,
That's right.
Yeah, then you have the third specialized high school as an option. You have the additions to the high schools as an option, and you have new high schools
Mhm.
as an option.
and you now have your baseline and 3 options.
Mhm.
Yes.
I think if we get into voting somehow, which I don't know if it'll ever get to that, but we just have to be careful if we have one option in column 1, one option in column 2, and then the preferences get split between 2 options in column 3. So people really do prefer that configuration, but it looks like fewer people do because it's split between 2 different
Between us
options.
voting?
Do you mean the
The
community?
community,
Well, the
yeah.
community
community
won't be
doesn't vote. The
voting.
community
So
doesn't vote.
everything that when we go out and we speak to the community and we
It's all
have community
subjective.
engagement sessions and we're sharing information, we're gathering feedback to
Okay.
bring it back to the board so that the board can vote. This
Okay.
is not a community vote. It's the board's responsibility.
Sure. Okay,
They might be given dots to show preferences, but that's not voting.
yeah.
So the difference between 2A and 3B
3B.
would be when the additions to the high schools were done. Is that correct? In what phase?
2A.
They may end up the same, but that's at the end of the 10-year plan. There's a difference in when the additions would be.
2A, 3B are similar, that you have that third shared high school building. Is that what you're asking? 2A and 3B
2A and 3B.
have that shared high school building as an option. Depends how you do it. Either you build new or use these freshmen. To me, how you get there has some bearing, but if you want that third shared space is really the question. How you get there is roughly the same cost, whether you build a new building
It's 2A.
or repurpose East Freshman. You're still going to have to add on the East Freshman to get there.
Yeah.
So again, I think, I don't know who said it, but you have your
Yeah, it's in the-
stay as we are, do a third building, do additions or new high schools. Or 3 core ones. Really how you like the grade level configurations below your high school level.
Right.
There again, architecturally, I'll throw out that if you're going to go with this optional type high school, the third high school type building, functionally, it would probably work better if you were building it from scratch, because those are going to be different functions probably than a typical classroom, high school, Lakota East type building. So if that truly is your goal, functionally, you're probably better to build a new building and not do the addition at Lakota East or
Freshman.
East Freshman.
These freshmen already has in building your gym.
It already has the building.
Things that
Yeah,
you may not even need.
I see
So
that.
if you're looking for truly space that's efficient and want to meet your goals and needs, a newer space might do that better than trying to reconfigure an existing building.
Which is 3B.
Right, but East Freshman could be, it's going to be used regardless whether it's going to be your third high school or your new junior high. It's still not going to go away as,
Right.
so it's not like we're getting rid of a brand new building and not repurposing it for something better.
We're talking
Who's
about
on first?
eliminating 2A.
Yeah. that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, we're talking
It's
about,
back there.
we're back, is that what we're
That's
talking
what
about,
I'm saying.
eliminating 2A?
Yes.
This is the-
I'm comfortable with that.
I'm comfortable eliminating 2A as well.
Where did you land?
I said, I'm comfortable eliminating 2A.
Everybody?
Yeah, I would rather eliminate option 2C where I'm just not a fan of the additions to the building, only because I've been through the additions in my experience. So I'm not a fan of it. And I just see architecturally, I just see a lot of issues with that. And I would prefer to, I don't like 2A because of the cost, but I do not like the 2C because of the additions. And I just see a bunch of problems with that.
So 2B doesn't have the additions as the new high school.
Right.
Does
So
that
we could
still
just
give
add
us all
2B.
3 options?
So if we eliminate 2A, 2B still has the no addition to the high school, correct?
But it has a third
As
high
a
school.
2B.
I think
has
it's
the-
really important for our community to have the option of additions to the high schools
Okay.
as a consideration.
And then B and C don't have them. 2B.
So we have the additions, but we also have it in 3B without the addition,
Well, we had
correct?
the additions in 1A.
And 3B also, correct?
No.
The 3C or whatever, which 3 are we? carrying?
3B is just the new Lakota land.
Yeah.
And
I want to
C
point
is
out, I
2
did
new
have it down to
schools.
4, gentlemen. Just want to point that out.
What's that?
Just want to point out, I did have it down to 4. Okay, let's throw back 2A, 2B, 2C.
We're bringing B back.
I think I'm hearing more people say C than I'm hearing say B, because then you have all 3 options to Jenny's point of additions, new high schools, or 3 high schools. Or 2 high schools with the specialized program school.
So in those options, there is one has the additions, one has adding the new high school.
Yeah, so 2,
Talking about eliminating A, that was Chris's suggestion.
Yes.
So where is the board? Let's just tackle that one. Where's the board sitting on that?
I'm fine.
Kelly, Julie, I heard you say, okay with eliminating A.
2A.
Yeah, 2A,
Yes.
yes.
I'm comfortable with that.
correct?
I would rather eliminate 2C.
Hold on one at a time.
Yeah, I'm fine eliminating A because B gives us, and keeping B, because B gives us the new building.
You talking 2B or?
3B.
I'm talking,
2B.
did we already eliminate 2B?
We did.
We did. I'm sorry.
So we
Hold on,
can go
let me
back and
see.
look at it again if you want
Yeah,
to,
we
but
can- yeah.
let's stick with our
No,
2s
no.
for a moment.
I'm good right now.
Okay,
Um,
so the question is eliminate 2A or not? And it's wide open for what anybody thinks, but Kelly, I think you're talking now.
so I'm trying to think, so two, if we, so we'd be keeping 2C, which has the additions.
Right,
And I know we don't want to jump to 3B, but to me, in my head, I have to jump to 3B because it gives us all of the options, adding on to the high school
Mhm.
or adding a building.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
so I think we're already keeping 3B,
okay,
3B and C. Can we eliminate either A or C in 2?
yes, we can eliminate one of them.
Which one would you like to eliminate?
I do not, to be honest with you, I do not have a preference.
Okay,
I will go with the will of the board on this one.
Kelly is Switzerland,
I am Switzerland.
Isaac,
I am eliminating 2A because 2C and 2B, which is 2C and 3B are actually my favorite. And I would like to keep these 2 in case 2C and 2B, 3B do not make it, 2C will make it because of that additional building.
all right, so
And the
Kelly
con-
is
and the
neutral.
confidential.
Isaac, you are talking about eliminating 2A.
Yeah.
Darby?
I mean, ultimately it is up to the community, like you said. So,
It's ultimately up to us.
well, I mean, at least giving them that option to, and their feedback to have a renovation or have an addition, if that's an option that we would like feedback on.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll go with eliminating 2A.
Okay, Julie?
Agreed. I would keep 2C, which allows the addition, 3B, which allows 3 high schools or 2 high schools and a specialty high school, and then C, which allows for 2 new high schools only. So
Perfect.
So that's
all
where we're
three
at. I'm in
payments.
agreement with that.
So we are,
So we are keeping 1A as our baseline, 2C, 3B, and 3C. Good job, board. Let's move on. We have a lot more to cover.
wow.
Chris, we just covered 1 and 3. Jenny, do you want to tackle brief recap of finances and operations costs?
Sure. So I just wanted to basically ask if anybody had any questions from the last time, but I have given you an updated presentation from the last meeting. I think it was Julie asked for, could we see the millage calculator that would show, what we would have to actually collect, not versus what would be on the ballot. So those have been added on pages, I believe, 10 and 12.
This is the Board of Education Facilities Committee meeting from March 28th, Jenny.
Yes,
Okay.
this
Should change some slides.
this presentation. And then the slides on page 9 and 11 were fixed for that estimated net overall increase in bond mills that had the incorrect amount the last time we met. So it's just been corrected with the additional information that was requested. So I just wanted to let you know that that's there for you.
Take a moment to look at that board, see if there are any questions. We're on page 12.
I know we discussed with the mills that we currently have coming in. Would it be better to have like a phase 1, which would cost a little bit more upfront with the mills that we are already receiving? And then it would take the price of phase 2 and phase 3 taper off a little bit from the initial money drop, so to speak. Would that be best for our community or for the district? Or is there a like, I guess let's best plan of approach financially that would be beneficial?
So we looked at, because this plan would be over a period of time. And so we looked at, would it be better to split this up and do more than one bond levy, if you will? And in reviewing everything, what we're presenting and we're recommending is to do one bond issue for the entire plan that would take into consideration and would benefit from the existing bond millage that is dropping down because we've been able to restructure our bond, the length of time that we're paying for those bonds. And so we believe this is the best plan, which is to do one and done, if you will. And the impact to our community would be lessened because of the way that we've restructured those bonds, and the impact would be much less than what the levy language would show, which would be a communication plan, but it would be best for our community to do it this way, if that answers you.
And then I believe you also said, just a reminder, that we do not have to use the bond right away. That if we wanted to wait till maybe prices dropped, or we felt that there would be a better time in the future to start building and using, these items needed, that might be an option.
Right. So that the bond levy would authorize the issuance of those bonds. But then you would build that plan to issue the bonds when it would be best in the best interest of the district and upon when we would need those funds to actually build those. So you could do the financing over a period of time, but you would authorize it in one bond issue.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And that would also depend on not only costs coming down, but what we need to do in buildings in the immediate.
Mhm.
Correct, correct.
Okay.
I think just to add on to that, from what I understand, what John was talking about as well, and it's a discussion for the board, is participation with the OACC.
Yeah.
If you do participate, you have more flexibility on when, and how long you have to issue those bonds, correct?
That is correct. There's some allowances on your debt limitation, and it gives you a longer period of time to issue those bonds. So,
Other questions, board, on finances and operations cost? And Ginny, now that we've narrowed those options down, we can do some more work on the operational savings for each of
Yes.
those plans.
Definitely.
That'd be great. Other questions? Kelly, you good? Is it good? All right, we will move to number 4, the review of proposed master facilities plan timeline, which I believe is this document we have in front of us.
Yes, so well, the calendar in front, so. Again, this is a draft schedule based on just some assumptions that were made. So it'll be up for the board to consider. If they want to change this assumption, it would impact the schedule. So for this schedule, there's 2 pieces of it. We have a short-term schedule at the very top. It indicates what needs to be done over the next basically year. A year plus. The long-term schedule below tells you how long things will go to get into the other phases of the master plan. So a few highlights here that we want to look at. Consider we based our assumptions on this time schedule based off a May 2023 ballot issue, just for planning purposes. So the board would still have to go through the process to determine, but for purposes of this schedule, we looked at a May ballot issue and tried to back plan on what would need to be done between now and May to make that a reality. So, and looking at this, you know, there's a whole lot of community engagement for sure that you would see on this, and there's a whole variety of things that Betsy and the team would do to get out there and engage the community in different aspects of it. Some of the things that we would have to really consider is between now and really probably over the summer is participation with the OCC. If we want to participate with the OCC, we probably need to look at doing that resolution over the summer to see if we want to participate and get those credits back. So, and when we submit that, so they can go through that process, we'll submit our final master plan approval, and we'll be on record as yes, we want to participate. If we do not want to participate with the OFCC, that might change the schedule a little bit and when we got to have things done. So that's probably an upcoming discussion at one of our next meetings is yes or no on the OFCC, and if we want to participate with them and what that means, both from a financing point of view and a scheduling point of view. Did I get that right, Jim? So just looking at the if in May, there's things that you can do by the end of this year with the resolutions, the auditor, that religion. So those would happen by the end of this calendar year to make that happen.
Now you would need to start your first set of resolutions you would need to look at and adopt in December of this year. So while that sounds like a ways away, it's really
Not really.
not.
And I don't believe that can happen until we've done our community engagement piece, which Betsy will be talking about in just a few minutes.
Well, isn't that in here? Community engagement.
Correct.
From now to.
From May forever.
Right. But the initial meetings with individuals within our community, that opportunity for people to weigh-in needs to be our next step.
I think that's what's on here.
Yeah, we were just trying to set, like, well, first of all, November would be the first opportunity, to which we said, we think that's probably not realistic.
Yeah.
So then the next time you could be on the ballot, although it looks like we might have in August, I'm throwing that one completely out, would be May of 2023. So that's why this was selected. And then we're working backwards from there. If you wouldn't select May of 23, then you'd be looking at November of 23.
Yeah, that's.
So
All right, board, any questions on the timeline as it's been presented to us?
Looks good. Anxious to hear Betsy's plan.
Betsy, the floor is yours.
Can we just, at the bottom part, real quick on
Oh,
the
sorry.
timeline, just to understand, if the board decides to participate with the OFCC, Jim spoke with our contact and they said, when you go through the OFCC process, your number needs to come up before you get your funding piece back. So he said, we're estimated probably another 5 to 10 years before we get our portion of funding back. So the way we plan this out would be that funding would come back and would fund phase 2 of all the work in the master facilities plan with money that we receive back. So that's how we would do that. That's how that works out.
Thank you, Chris.
Sorry.
That's very helpful.
In best case scenario, dirt in the shovel or shovel in the dirt in 2.5 years.
Hey, Matt, can you use your mic, please?
Yeah, good point, Matt.
Just as a point of clarification or something to highlight that even if this goes through the way we're talking about right now, or what the projected timeline would be, there's no shovels and dirt for 2.5 years.
Right.
Okay, so for community engagement, the third page that Chris handed out today is a chart that we've roughly laid out. We are looking at lots of community meetings to get feedback on, well, to share why this master facilities plan is important. Because while we started that in 2019, in 2020, we paused twice. And so we need to re-educate our community about why we're even doing this. And then now that you've narrowed it down to 3 options plus our baseline, we can go in and explain the differences between those options and get feedback on each of them to bring back to the board. So the community engagement plan is going to have lots of meetings. We want to reach our staff, we want to reach our families, and of course, we want to reach our community members as well. In the Paul Fallon survey that we did in December, it came back, there was quite a shift in the percentage of parents who don't have children in our district. It dropped from 70%, which we've been using for several years, to 52%, which kind of makes sense because of all of the growth that we've had with housing developments. So we need to reach out to our seniors, we need to reach out to our businesses, we need to reach out to, like I said, our families, our staff, the parents who maybe they have young children who aren't in school yet, or the private school parents, the homeschool parents. We need everybody to be engaged. So lots of community meetings. We would like to have community meetings at our buildings that we're talking about decommissioning, and include tours on that, because let's be honest, if you drive by our buildings or even if you walk in, they don't look that bad. But there's lots of things that we can explain why we're talking about why the OFCC doesn't want us to renovate, they want us to replace, and why that would be more efficient for our community. Coupled with the community meetings and the feedback through thought exchange, we've got lots of other ways to communicate and share. Obviously, our website is up and running for the master facilities. We will keep that updated. The documents that we've gone over tonight will be uploaded either today or very shortly. The documents that we've looked at the other committee meetings are already up there. We will use social media. We have a financial prospectus going out in May this year. We are going to include facilities in that. We have our quality profile that will go out. Those publications go out to every single household in our district. The quality profile will have that go out in September so that we can get feedback that way too. We will include a way for people to give us feedback. Of course, Matt has his in the loop with the soups, where we can always talk about the facilities, plans, chamber events, all things like that. But May is going to be tricky for community meetings because May is a very busy month for the district, but definitely starting up in June.
Maybe we could plan some of those external groups in May, a couple of those, instead of trying to do the internal and then.
The external though does include. It doesn't include our staff having to be available. Just as a. Betsy, when's the quality profile going out?
We'll get that out in September this year. Normally it's like the beginning of
Yeah, I
October,
can't
but we'll
remember.
push it earlier.
What is a quality profile?
So the quality profile looks at the past school year. It's a complement to the state report card that goes out. We've done it for 5 years now. And it's a deeper dive into the education that our students receive at Lakota than what the report card shows.
Okay, thank you.
So questions on the plan as Betsy's laid it out? Anyone?
Now, what I included is just through December of this year.
Right.
Obviously, that would go through May of next year.
Is there anything specific from the board that you would want us to start on now to try to start engaging the community? Anything that, from your perspective, that we need to do, to attend, to start delivering the message so they can understand and get feedback?
Do we have a tab on the website, like a master's facility plan?
So when you
tab?
go to our homepage, lakotaonline.com, under the trending now bar, right at the very top, it says master facilities, and it'll take you right to the webpage.
And again, I think with everybody's work today to try to narrow it down is going to help that communication greatly. It was hard for all of us even to get through some of
Right.
that. So to help explain it to our community what that really means, we can start putting together things to start sharing that. But since it is an important part of the whole process, so the sooner we can start on that, the better, whether it's small group meetings, going to groups that aren't associated typically because their kids aren't here. The seniors are, I know, going to be at West all summer long. We can go talk to them. We can do a bunch of different things between now and the start of next school year.
It almost might be beneficial too, to have some sort of representation or a booth or whatever you'd like to call it at the business expo, the Chamber Business Expo. A lot of businesses go through there,
We can-
so.
Yeah.
And to Chris's point, we can share information too with the seniors when they're in our building this summer.
Are we now going to take in the next few days the options that we've narrowed down and put those on the website?
I think we need to rename them, like baseline 1, 2, and 3 or something,
Yeah.
because no one's going to understand 2C, 3B,
Right,
3C.
yeah. you
Right.
can-
Yeah. I'm not saying you said, I'm just saying to the.
I
for all of us.
don't,
It would probably help all of us.
yeah, you can name them whatever you'd like. Mr.
And the other
Miller.
thing that we'll do is I'll write a story and we'll recap this meeting to kind of explain that it's dropped down to our baseline and then 3 options and go into some detail there so that there will be an explanation, not just the chart.
Would this include going to different organizations within the Lakota district, like
The Community Engagement Committee is going to work and come up with a list of demographics, break down external and internal that we think we need to touch base with.
like going to the parent teacher PTA meetings, the DPC,
Yeah.
even the
Yeah,
Westchester
I've
Tea
actually-
Party?
I've
like, I
already,
think it
yeah,
would
I've
benefit.
already mentioned it to DPC and
And
I
President's
was at the
Council.
President's Council today that we'll be looking for feedback and absolutely we'll go to other organizations.
But if the
Thanks.
board has suggestions, let's send those to Betsy so that she has those for different groups that you think are important to touch base with. If you have a contact name and number, that'd be great to send that to.
And I'm sure over the next few days, we'll sort of develop our deck of what we want to share and start going out to explain. So if you're out and about and you have groups that want to hear a presentation or discuss it, I'm more than willing to meet whenever, wherever to go through that and have that discussion as well. I know Matt's out quite a bit, but you can only be so many places at one time, and I'm more than willing to go on the road show and talk through it and make sure people understand and be able to give feedback to you all as well.
I'm sure we'll all be taking kits with us whenever we go to any speaking engagement or in front of another group, That's like all of us will be doing that.
Right. Maybe even to the PTA point. I remember last time, maybe we do like a five school PTA instead of trying to get to 23 buildings. We combine and say we're doing, for all suggestions,
It'd be nice if we could combine grade levels.
yeah. Combine grade levels, and I think we did that last time.
And I think that there's value in considering bringing Tracy Richter back to lead some community sessions, because this is his expertise on educational visioning.
It's a good idea.
Other questions or suggestions for Betsy? Betsy, anything you need from us?
Nice job, Betsy.
Thank you for putting this together.
Yeah,
This is
helpful.
very helpful. And Chris, thank you for that. Do we have other pieces of presentation, or do we want to talk about next dates?
We'll talk about next dates and anything else that you
Actually,
guys.
let me do one thing before that, if we could. Board, Jenny has passed out minutes from our last facilities meeting. I'll take a motion to approve those in a second.
So moved.
Thank you,
Second.
Julie. Thank you, Darby. Any discussion? All right, Jenny, would you call the roll?
Mrs. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mrs. Bodie,
Yes.
Mr. Adi,
Yes.
Mrs. Casper,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Passarge,
Yes.
Mr. Hatfield,
Yes.
Mrs. Fuller,
Yes.
myself, yes, Mrs. O'Connor.
Yes. Thanks, Jenny. Chris, anything else, Matt? Well, that was a fairly efficient meeting. I thought it would take much longer to get through the options than it
We're
did.
good.
Betsy, thank you. Chris, anything? Anything else?
Tim, thank you.
No.
Actually, thank you.
We just need to, are we going to stay with our current meeting schedule? That's, I think it's.
So our facilities committee, we've not been able to hit it quite when we've needed to the last few times. If we go back to our regular schedule, it'll be May 2nd. Does that work for everyone?
Yes.
It'll be an evening meeting at 6:30. All right, May 2nd at 6:30. And if we
Here.
have a presentation, that might be a great time to do the presentation for the board. I don't know if that's too fast to turn it around, but Betsy's raising her eyebrow at me, maybe not. Whatever you,
We should throw
whatever you
anything
can
at
share.
you.
Rough is okay. Rough draft is fine.
Yeah, we can put together and get your feedback on, hey, we want to take this out to the broader community. What other things you think should be included in this presentation? Would be
That would be great.
great feedback, yeah.
And if we could also have some cost, excuse me, operational cost
Yep, I got
attached to
that.
those options, I think that would be really helpful as well. Jenny, if that's doable. Okay, anything else more that you'd like to see?
We should thank Ashley. Nobody thanked Ashley for
Ashley,
coming.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you.
We thanked Jim. We didn't thank Ashley.
And we appreciate that. It's quite an undertaking.
Right?
All right, board, any other comments or questions? And I'm going to pull us out of committee and we will re-adjourn for our regular meeting at 6:30.
Thanks.
Thank you.